تعالى نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله أرسله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا فصلوات الله وسلامه عليه. We begin by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We praise Him because He is worthy of praise. And His worthiness for praise comes from His names and His attributes which show us His perfection, subhanahu min ilah. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from the evils within ourselves and the evil consequences of our actions. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send His peace and blessings upon the last and final messenger, upon his family, his companions, his wives, and all those who follow his way until the end of time. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. We remind one another to be people of taqwa, to be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all of your decisions and in all of your day-to-day affairs. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among the muttaqeen. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Amma ba'd. Some 20 years ago, a very, very well-known pastor, very well-known across the nation, decided to take a trip to Syria. Syria being a land that is ancient in history, a land that has roots in the Roman Empire or Roman history as well as in Christian history. He felt that it was part of his job to go and visit, explore this ancient land to see what has been left behind when it comes to the history of his religion. So he tells his congregation, once again his congregation is very large. He tells his congregation that he will be taking a trip to Syria to learn. And to his surprise, shortly after that announcement, hey, listen, this is unbelievable. Shortly after his announcement, this is 20 years ago, he gets a phone call from Benjamin Netanyahu himself. Not from his office, not from an aide, not from a minister, from him himself. Why is the head of a state calling this pastor? Very bizarre. What does he want? Netanyahu tries to convince this pastor not to go to Syria. And now this pastor is bewildered. The head of a state personally calling me to dissuade me from going to Syria. Remember, 20 years ago, before the civil war, before any of this stuff. And so the pastor brought his advisors together and said, look, this is what happened, what do you think? And he makes the decision, I'm going to go. He says, I'm going to go. He ignored Netanyahu's request. So he goes to Syria, spends some time over there, and comes back. And he meets with some of the Muslims. And he says, this is what happened to me, X, Y, and Z. And they asked him, why do you think he called you? He said, it's obvious why he called me. Because in Syria, and as our brothers and sisters from Syria, you know this. In Syria, what he saw was Muslims, Christians, and Jews living together peacefully. Not only that, they cared about one another. Now to us Muslims, what's so surprising about that? That's nothing new. We've been doing this for 1400 years. But to the Western world, it's very bizarre, it's very strange. In fact, it's very refreshing. Different people with different convictions can live with each other, side by side with each other, in harmony, and care about each other. That is something Mr. Netanyahu, I don't say that respectfully, Netanyahu does not want the world to see, especially not the Western world. And you know what? It's not just this pastor who was extremely refreshed, extremely excited to see that. A very famous food blogger. What's a food blogger? somebody who travels the world to explore the different cuisines of different parts of the world. Very famous, 10 million subscribers, this man. He takes a food tour in Syria recently. He's walking around, you can see the buildings destroyed behind him. He points it out. And he says, look at the Syrian people, how resilient they are. He praises them. He himself noticed exactly what this pastor noticed. Remember, he's a food blogger. He's not about the history, he's not about the politics, it's not about the society, it's about the food. But he couldn't help himself except to go on top of a building and tell his audience of 10 million plus, I want to show you something. He said, you see that building right there? That's a mosque. And you see the building right next to it, that's a church. And you see the building right there, right next to it, that's a synagogue. And you see those pillars right there? Those are from the Roman Empire before Islam even came on the scene. He was absolutely dazzled by what he saw. He had to share it to the world, to his audience. Dear brothers and sisters, Netanyahu does not want the world to know who you are. Because the entire enterprise of Islamophobia, this vicious machine which is fueled with billions of dollars, has one goal: for the world not to know who you are. Because how can they smear you when people know who you are? If your reputation, if the Muslim reputation in America is that Muslims are great people, we know them, then everybody will know very quickly that those who say elsewise, they're just trying to smear you. It's propaganda. But Islamophobia has worked so well. It's because people don't know us. They're not aware of us. They don't see us. They don't know who we are. And we Muslims, we must change that. We must. Because so long as we Muslims do not define who we are to the American people, others will define who we are to the American people. Let me repeat that. If we don't take the banner of our identity, of defining to the broader community who we are, others will do that for us. Others will say Muslims are X, Y, and Z. And so we must be visible, dear brothers and sisters. We must. And to really show you that it is part of Islam to be visible, I remind us of the common practice of adhan. The point of adhan is to announce to the public, to the Muslims, prayer has entered. We say it publicly. We say it out loud so that it is heard and it is known. When we pray, we are meant to pray as a group in a congregation. Why? So that salah is seen as a focal point of the Muslim experience. Hajj is meant to announce to the world, this is who we are. We are people who believe that none is worthy of worship except Allah. And we are only slaves to Allah. We are not slaves to humans. We are not slaves to money. We are not slaves to the world or to our desires. Islam has a goal to be public. And this is precisely what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. In the end of the 15th chapter, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Fasda' bima tu'mar." Be vocal about what you have been commanded to preach. Be vocal, be public. Let people see who you are. Because the world needs it. The world needs to see who you are. In a time where family is falling apart, and we Muslims, we have many challenges, many problems, we are far from perfect, but we are faring better when it comes to family, aren't we? When it comes to dealing with desires, Muslims have many challenges and we're far from perfect, but we tend to fare better, don't we? When it comes to values and ethics, we are far from perfect, but we tend to fare better, don't we? And in a time where people are searching, they are looking for something fresh and new. You are that. We are that. And so we Muslims must be visible. How can we be more visible? Number one, dear brothers and sisters, we need to be more active at the local government level and at our local communities. I'm talking about the cities. I'm talking about the city councils, the school boards, the commissions that are run at a local level. We need to have a clear presence there. One brother of our community who's working in political advocacy and policy at the local level, he said he visited six city councils in the city of LA, in the county of LA. 6. And he said there was one thing in common between all 6. And we asked him, well, what was it? He said, no, they don't know us. They don't know who we are. And so when somebody comes and says Muslims are bad, okay, well, we don't know Muslims. You're telling us they're bad, that means they must be bad. When Fox News comes and starts saying Muslims are trying to put Sharia law in your homes and X, Y, they didn't even know what Sharia law is. People believe it. Why? Because they don't know us. The city councils don't know us. The schools don't know us. They need to know us. And it's something as simple as going to some of these council meetings and popping your face and say, hey, what can we do that the city needs? It doesn't have to be confrontational, dear brothers and sisters. It could be something as going to the city council and saying, hey, look, I'm trying to put together, I have a group of people, I have a community that wants to do something for the city. What does the city need? And taking on that role. You think they won't appreciate that? You think they will forget that Muslims did this? And no, they won't forget, dear brothers and sisters. It makes a difference. So participating at the local communal level lets us be known and lets us be visible, so that when the Islamophobic machine tries to attack us, people know who we are and it finds deaf ears. In the book, The 100 Years of War in Palestine by Professor Rashid Khalidi, he says something very important. He says when President Truman was presented with a bill or something that has to do with policy towards Israel, his advisors advised him against it. They said, don't do it. It's going to be bad in the future. This is a bad move. President Truman said the following. He said, pay attention to this. He said the following. I understand why you believe this is a bad thing. But I don't have 100,000 Arabs lobbying me. There are 100,000 Israelis lobbying me. What can I do? And he signs the bill. Just like that. Our numbers aren't deficient, dear brothers and sisters. Our resources aren't deficient. But we Muslims, we hide. We hide thinking that we'll be more comfortable in our homes. Thinking that we'll be more comfortable in our own environment that we create to suit ourselves. I'm not saying be public 24/7, but we have to have a presence. We have to. So participate in the local councils, the city councils, the commissions and the school boards or whatever boards at the local level. This is how this country works. And the more we do that, the more we will be visible. Number 2, dear brothers and sisters, is that we need to show the world. We need to show the world that we care more about people than profits. This is becoming a much more widely spread slogan. People over profits. When you look at food, when you look at the ingredients in these foods, you cannot pronounce 90% of these ingredients. They're chemicals, and they're putting it in these foods. Why? Because it's cheaper that way. Who cares if people get sick? Who cares what the consequences are? And one person pointed out, he went to the shampoo section, the hygiene, and he looked at all the shampoos, and he says, look at what the ingredients in these shampoos. And then he says, look, right next to the shampoos are the hygiene equipment to repair hair loss. And they're by the same companies. They know their products cause you to lose hair, and then they make the products to convince you that you can restore your hair. And it's the same companies. Unbelievable. We need to show the world that as Muslims, it is ingrained and rooted in our values, in the way we live life, in the way we view the world, that people come before profit. And when people see this, dear brothers and sisters, do you not think they will gravitate towards us? Do you not think they will start to be influenced by what we have to offer? Of course they will. The Islamophobic machine, aside or along with being a machine that's meant to make you all look like devils, like the problem of the world, they seek to make money out of it. How many times, how many individuals come as these experts on Islam, come out of nowhere, and it's just a money machine for them. Just a money machine for them. They don't care about the damage, the harms, whatever, so long as it makes them money, and they eventually get exposed and people are sick of it. They are looking for a people, a community, a religion, a way of life that values people over profits. That's exactly who we are. Exactly who we are. And so when a companion spoke to the general of the Persians, just to show us that this isn't just us riding the wave of culture and trying to take advantage of it. No, this is seated. This is rooted. It's deep-seated in our religion. This companion told the general, جِئْنَا لِنُخْرِجَ النَّاسِ مِنْ عِبَادَةِ النَّاسِ إِلَى عِبَادَةِ رَبِّ النَّاسِ. He said, our message, our mission is to free people from being slaves of people, to being slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Lord of people, the Lord of the creation. And so we look at how the Muslims were able to win so many people over. It was through things like this. You are valued as a human being in the religion of Islam. And Prophet does not come before you as a human being in the religion of Islam. We all live like this. You know, haven't you invited a non-Muslim to your home and they're just dazzled by your generosity? To us, it's like, yeah, that's kind of normal. It's expected. If we don't do this, we're criticized. This is very normal. All across the Muslim lands, from all backgrounds. They find it so amazing. Wow, they're so generous. No, we are applying our religion that values people over profit, that values generosity over our bank accounts. It means so much. You have that, dear brothers and sisters. It's about sharing it with more people than we're already sharing it with. At your work, in your neighborhood, wherever it is. Be who you already are. People need it. Just do it more visibly. And last, but not least, make sure that part of your weekly routine is servicing or serving others. Muslims serve others. Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam served others. He wasn't just at the top of the food chain and commanding people to do things. He was on the ground doing anything and everything that the companions were doing. When they built the masjid, the Prophet ﷺ was holding bricks and carrying bricks and building the masjid with his fellow believers. He was there on the ground. He served the people. He was accessible by the people. He understood the people. He was tied to the people. He was connected to them. We need to be like that. Rasulullah is our role model, ﷺ, and we are meant to be like him in any time or any place that we are currently at or living. So be a service person for the community. Find opportunities to serve the Muslim community. Find opportunities to serve the broader community. There is no shortage of them. And don't think that you have nothing to offer. Wallahi, you have something to offer more than just your money. I'm not talking about money here. Of course, give if you can. But it's not just about money. It's about you using your 2 feet, your 2 hands to do something that is positive and well and good for the community. Maybe you know how to edit videos. You're good at taking videos on your phone. Go to the MSAs and record what they are doing. Talk to them. Say, hey, you know, I have this skill. I'd like to just record your events and give it to you so you can use. They need that. They would appreciate it. The MSAs are doing so much good work, but they rarely get attention because maybe they don't have the resources. Help them with that. Maybe your community needs some help when it comes to serving the elderly. Maybe your community needs some help when it comes to the homeless. Whatever it is, there is no shortage of needing help. And you have something to offer. And I'll give you this, dear brothers and sisters. The Prophet ﷺ says the following. إِنَّ مِنَ النَّاسِ مَفَاتِيحَ لِلْخَيْرِ مَغَالِيقَ لِلشَّرِّ وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَفَاتِيحَ لِلشَّرِّ مغاليق للخير فطوبى لمن جعل الله مفاتح الخير على يديه وويل لمن جعل الله مفاتيح الشر على يديه. He says the following. Among people are those who have the keys of good in their hands and they close the doors of evil. And among people are the exact opposite. those who open the doors of evil and close the doors of good. So glad tidings, paradise for the one who Allah puts the keys of good in their hands. And a caution, a warning, a stern warning to those who Allah puts the keys of evil in their hands. Don't you want to be part of this, dear brothers and sisters? Don't you want to go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having done good and know something? While our religion is very worship-oriented, the greater reward, aside from the obligations of Islam, the greater reward is about serving others. Serving others. Serving others. And there's no shortage of the hadith that will encourage us to serve others, to be there for others. You, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كُنْتُمْ خَيْرَ أُمَّةٍ أُخْرِجَتْ لِلنَّاسِ. You are the best of people. But notice the wording, أُخْرِجَتْ لِلنَّاسِ. And Allah didn't say, أُخْرِجَتْ مِنَ النَّاسِ. Allah says, you are the best people that has been sent out to the people. Allah didn't say you are the best people who came from amongst the people. You are meant to be amongst the people, between the people, for the people. You already have it in you, dear brothers and sisters. By merit of believing in La ilaha illallah, there's enough good in your heart to bring good to the world. And in a time where people feel they have no leadership, they have no one to look up to, you can play that role. You can fill that gap. You can fill that void. Just do it. And your reward is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على خير خلق الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن والاه أما بعد. Dear brothers and sisters, we might be looking at the current election cycle, listening to some of the speeches of people who we know are in it for themselves, or people who are just evil, people who have bashed Muslims before. We look at both sides of the aisle, knowing that they're pretty much the same when it comes to the plight of the Palestinians. They will continue to support the terrorists and the government of the state of Israel unconditionally. And we might feel that, that we are so irrelevant, that we have failed our brothers and sisters in Palestine or elsewhere. But let me tell you something. This isn't the first time Muslims have found themselves fragmented, weak, economically weak, socially divided, politically weak. It's not the first time. In fact, this isn't the worst time. When you go back 700, 800 years ago in our history, you will find that the fragmentation of the Muslim world was even greater than now. The hardships that were facing them were greater than now. But after that slump of Islamic history came an era of 400 or 500 years of peace and prosperity for the Muslim Ummah, when the Ottomans and the Mughals came on the scene and united the Ummah after being disunited, bringing protection to the Ummah after being vulnerable, bringing prosperity and stability to the Ummah after chaos and upheaval. But something we have to acknowledge is that that didn't come out of nowhere. It wasn't just a flick of a wand and then everything changed. Rather, when you study Islamic history, especially in the time where Muslims were weak, what you will find is that there were countless individuals from the Muslim Ummah collaborating and working, contributing and participating in minor or major ways that slowly brought about the strength that came afterwards. And so don't feel helpless, but rather feel that there is an opportunity for you to play a role to bring about a better tomorrow. And just to show you that we are already doing it, and it's about you participating in it, you going a little bit further and being part of that. Have you noticed the Latino community, how they have come out in support of Palestine? Do you think that's random? Do you think that's just out of nowhere? It's not. Remember several years ago when there was a crisis on the border and these young people, these young kids were being locked up in cages and being mistreated. Who came on the scene there? Did not the Muslim community voice their concern and their discontent and oppose such treatment? Did we not? Well, the Latino community noticed. They noticed. They saw us participating in what's meaningful to them, what's important to them. And so when something is important to us, they rose to the occasion as well. When the black community saw the Muslims voice their concern and their concern over the treatment of black people in terms of some bad apples within the police department, and we called that out, you think they didn't notice? They did notice. The point here is when we are involved in the broader community, the favors are returned. The seeds are planted for more strength, for better, for more unity. So play a role, dear brothers and sisters, and remember, we will be asked about what we used our life for. We will be asked that time that you had on earth, what did you do with it? The last thing you want your response to be is, I sat at home and I watched Netflix and I just entertained myself. I'm sure you would much rather tell Allah, oh Allah, I played even a minor role in making the world a little bit better. I played a minor role in making the ummah a little bit stronger. I played even a minor role in bringing hope to people who are hopeless. You already have that. It's not about developing the skills, it's about using it in the way Allah intended you to live, dear brothers and sisters. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq to make the correct decisions. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the wisdom to make the best of decisions. Allahumma aghfir lil-muslimin wal-muslimat wal-mu'minin wal-mu'minat al-ahya'i minhum wal-amwat innaka sami'un qareebun mujibu da'awat ya rabbil alameen. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our sins, to overlook our shortcomings. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect our brothers and sisters in Palestine, in East Turkestan, in India, in Kashmir, and wherever Muslims are being oppressed. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to show a better day for our brothers and sisters in Sudan, in Syria, in Yemen, and in Rohingya, or Myanmar, or wherever Muslims are going through difficulties. Allahumma ameen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us people who bring that alleviation and that relief to them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala use us for His cause, and may He protect us from being used by the shaitan. Allahumma ameen. Wa aqim as-salat.